Well, even the mighty Cixi, one of the most feared women in Chinese history, had someone she was afraid of. Be merciful. Be merciful. Be merciful. Hi there, Ziola here. Welcome back to my channel. Have you ever met someone so powerful, so untouchable, that you wonder what could possibly scare them? Well, even the mighty Cixi, the Empress Dowager of the Qing dynasty, one of the most feared women in Chinese history, had someone she was afraid of. And here's the twist. That person wasn't a prince, a general, or a court official. He was just a peasant. Before we dive in, let me take a moment to talk about who Cixi really was. She ruled China for almost 50 years, first behind the curtain as a regent for the young emperors, and later as true power behind the Qing throne. She was smart, ambitious, and incredibly good for survival, but also ruthless when it comes to holding on power. During her rule, China faced enormous pressure from the outside world, invasions, foreign trade, and spread of Christianity. In her later days, especially during the Boxer Rebellion, many foreign missionaries and Chinese Christians were killed, sometimes with her silent approval, and sometimes by her direct order. To the Western powers, she became a symbol of cruelty and resistance. To many Chinese at the time, she was both feared and strangely admired, a woman who dared to stand against the world at a terrible cost. So yes, she ruled with absolute authority, and very few people ever dared to challenge her, which is why this next story is so unbelievable. I mean, this is a story didn't make it to history records, but was believed to be true by many people. So one day, Cixi was bored and was looking for amusement. So she came up with a strange idea. She announced that she wanted to hear the most unpleasant, most irritating, and most frustrating story in the world. If anyone can make me angry, I will reward them with 100 gold coins. But if you make me laugh, I'll have your head. You can imagine how tense that palace became. A bold official, confident in his own cleverness, stepped forward. He thought, if she wanted to be angry, I'll give her a story that'll really sting. So he began to tell a tale, thinly disguised but clearly criticizing Cixi herself, how she seized power, manipulated emperors, and ruled the court with fear. He thought he was being very smart. He expected her to explode with a rage, but Cixi just laughed. Huh, what a delightful story, she said. And that was the end of him. No gold, no applause, just off with his head. Word spread quickly. People from all over, officials, scholars, and even storytellers came to try their luck. But no matter how insulting, how dark, how absurd the story were, Cixi always smiled and said, interesting, very interesting. And of course, none of them ever left the palace. And soon, no one dared to tell her stories at all. Then one day, a man from the countryside showed up at the palace gate. He was rough-looking, poorly dressed, and barely literate, but he was known in his village for being brave and quick-witted. His teacher had been punished by Cixi before, and now, hearing about her deadly storytelling challenge, he came up with a plan. When he was brought before the empress, he bowed awkwardly, clearly unfamiliar with the palace etiquette, and tripped on his words. And Cixi just chuckled. "Li Lianying," she said to her favorite Inuit. "Get this man a chair. Let's see what he has to say." Then the man began. "Your Majesty, in my village, there's a rich old man. He's devout, always praying to the Buddha, hoping that one day he would have a child. And sure enough, the gods blessed him with a beautiful baby girl." Cixi listened with mild interest, while her attendant Li Lianying thought to himself, another fool about to lose his head. The man continued, "But as the girl grew up, something was strange. She never learned to speak, except for one phrase. All day long, she'd be sitting at the door repeating, 'Be merciful, be merciful, be merciful.'" At first, Cixi smiled faintly, but as the man went on, and on, and on, repeating those same words again and again, her face started to tighten. "Be merciful, be merciful, be merciful, be merciful." That was all he said, and after nearly an hour, Cixi slammed his teacup down. Her voice thundered through the halls. "Enough! How dare you mock me!" The man immediately dropped to his knees and said calmly, "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your mercy." Cixi froze. She had promised not to punish anyone who could make her angry, and so though she was foaming, she forced a smile and said, "Fine, take him to collect his reward." That night, Cixi couldn't sleep. Some say it was that sound of those words, be merciful, echoing in her head. Some say it was the guilt, a reminder of the countless innocent lives she had taken. And others said she was simply furious about losing 100 taels of gold. From that day on, the Empress learned something important. Even the most powerful person in the world can be brought down to her knees, not by armies or politics, but by 3 simple words. 要慈悲. Be merciful. I love this story because it's just not really about fear. It's about awakening. It shows that sometimes the truth doesn't have to be shouted out. It just needs to be said again and again, until even the hardest heart began to listen. Maybe that's what be merciful really means. To see the power you have and still choose compassion. I'm Ziola. See you next time. Hi there, Ziola here. Do you ever find yourself missing those childhood stories as a teen or young adult? Some of them felt very scary when you first heard them, and some seemed pretty strange once you look back on them later. Before I moved to the US, I was already super familiar with Greek mythology, Bible stories, and a lot of classic Western fairy tales. But after I got here, I realized that most people around me had never even heard about the old myths or the stories of China. Some of my friends might know a bit about Japanese tales because of the anime they're watching, but Chinese tales, almost no one. That's why I'm starting this channel, to share some of the amazing stories I had grown up with. Some were told to me by my grandmother, and other came from this classic book, Liao Zhai, which literally translates to tales told at the dinner table. Anyway, I hope you enjoy these stories. Drop a comment to let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe.